Do you think you're going through a dark night of the soul or a spiritual awakening? In this 3-part series, I'm going to walk you through 3 spiritual awakenings that I have gone through. Through these 3 awakenings, I will tell you what you can expect when you're going through the dark night of the soul and awakening process, major things you will come across, including changes to your mind, body, emotions, and spirit as your soul comes online and gets activated. To introduce myself, I'm Drake Nyx. I'm an intuitive guide and soul coach, and I help people like you find their purpose and passion, bring it out into the world, and make the planet a better place while you're at it. In this first part of the awakening journey that I went through, I want to preface that there are many types of awakenings and dark nights of the soul. Some people experience the type of dark night of the soul that is very specific to a time period, like 1 month or 6 months or a year, where it is just darkness. And then all of a sudden they come to and they have these like major realizations and then they begin the awakening journey. That said, my awakening journeys have not been like that. And I have found that the awakening journey is not linear. Just like the yin and yang symbol, there is a little bit of darkness in the light and a little bit of light in the darkness. And for me, it was just over and over again between the 2 different themes that I was experiencing. It's kind of like if you have to dive deep down into the ocean and you're drowning and you're tumbling around in the ocean current. During the dark night of the soul, occasionally you get to come up to the surface, get a fresh breath of air, you see the sky, you're like, this is amazing and beautiful, and I've never breathed like this before. And then all of a sudden you go back down into the depths to learn more knowledge and wisdom that is there for you to find. There's also the idea of an awakening process, that you have your dark night of the soul and then you come through and then you are enlightened. And yet the journey is ongoing. The journey is infinite in all directions, and there's always more to know about ourselves, the world around us, and delving into all of the various layers in which our relationship with that external world takes place. So let's get into my first awakening. So there's just so much to this, which is why I'm making it a 3-part series. I probably could make even more. I'm going to try to synthesize it as quickly as possible, but there are just so many parts to each stage of my awakening journey. When I first started to awaken, I was in a sorority. I was very conservative. I was very materialistic. And I thought that I was going to follow this template that society had given me to go into business. I thought I wanted to go into hospitality. And so I was in college and I was learning a lot of new things about life around me. I was also partying very hard. I was drinking a lot, which turned into significant drug use. And I found myself wasted all the time. And I really was enjoying myself there for a while until things started to get pretty dark and the depression started to sink in. And the feelings that I was not quite living the right life began to become very apparent. In my spare time, I would just journal and ask myself, why am I not living up to my potential? And how do I be of service to the world around me? At that time, I was very Christian, and so I was constantly praying to God, to Jesus, and I was like, please just use me as a vessel. I want to help heal the world, and I want to heal myself, and I don't know how to do that because I have these addictions, and I just keep partying all the time, and it is running me into the ground. That was my first period that I started to experience my psychic abilities. In particular, if I was hungover or coming off of a drug, I started to find that when I closed my eyes, I was transported to different situations where I would be sitting at a table and I could see like 3 people at the table and they were all eating food, and I could like see them cutting into the food and eating it and talking to one another, and then it would transfer me to an elevator with people talking as if I wasn't there, or maybe I was part of the conversation, and then it would transport me to an outdoor space with people talking, and it would just shift again and again, where I kept seeing all of these faces and wasn't sure what to make of it, because at that point in time, nobody around me knew of psychic abilities. Nobody talked about the third eye. I was very much alone in this new understanding of changes that were taking place in my mind. as I was going through these changes, my relationships started to fall apart. I started to become aware of different types of belief systems, and the people that I hung out with, I began to see that the relationships were pretty toxic and based off of having a good time and doing a lot of drugs, and not actually based on the values that I wanted to see out of relationships. I already had a very loving heart, and the people that I was around didn't really reciprocate that. My sorority thought I was crazy, and that's a story for another time because it's actually kind of interesting. But I kind of got kicked out of my sorority. I chose to leave, but it was mutual. And so I was driven down a new path where I started to spend a lot of time alone. I started to meditate more. This was the time period that I started seeing stars going by. As I would meditate, it was like I was in the cosmos, and I was just so tapped in. All this beautiful energy was coming in. I started to see energy, and I could feel the energy, and I would sit there trying to move things across the room because I thought for sure I had telekinesis. So I had just practiced by myself in my room. I've yet to do telekinesis, but I knew that there was some sort of energy that was activating within me, and there was something that I was supposed to do with it. I went to a bar one day and I met this guy, and I told him my story, and he was like, oh, you need to meet my mom. She is a shaman. She's a healer. And so he introduced me to my mentor, who taught me Reiki at that time, and began to lay the foundation for a more structured way to understand my spirituality and the big changes that I was going through. At the same time, I was going through still the depression that I had had before was moving through. I'd have like these really, really great periods of time where there was so much expansion, and I was just channeling information, and I would write all of this poetry, and I was just really connected to this amazing, divine, sacred energy. And then, like I have touched on, where it's like you go into the light and then all of a sudden you go back into the waves, I would go back down into the darkness and wouldn't be able to pull myself out for long periods of time, praying that I wanted to be on the other side, but not knowing how to get there. And during that time period, I met this antagonist, my ex. And through that time period, I was trying to really figure my shit out. I was really trying to turn my life around, and he wanted to do drugs, and he would manipulate me and coerce me into doing drugs with him and take me into extremely bad trips. I think plant medicine can be an amazing way to access the spiritual realms, to begin to deconstruct the mental thought processes that we have that keep us in limitation. And I think that you need to do it in the right type of setting. And these often were not the right types of setting because I was not with somebody who was safe, and I was not doing doses that I would recommend for anybody. For one example, I was sitting on this hillside and I was just munching on a bunch of mushrooms, and I was looking out over the hills, and whoa, I could see the changes. I could see the way that life was going to change, and so much spiritual energy was entering into the planet, and I saw that I had a part in helping humanity to awaken. It was fucking beautiful, and I loved it, and I just wanted to bask there for as long as I possibly could. My partner at the time was really fixated on how many drugs he had, how much he was going to sell them for. It's amazing that somebody can talk about that subject for so long. And so he kept talking, and I kept being like, hey, can you please shut up? I'm having this experience here. Keeps talking, and all of a sudden I'm just getting more and more nauseous. I'm like, you need to shut the up. Like, I cannot listen to you anymore. Like, I'm going to get up and leave if you don't stop talking. And he kept being like, oh yeah, I'm cool. And then would keep talking. And eventually, I puked. But it was like all of the color, all the beauty that I was seeing just got vomited onto the ground. And so then proceeded to go down from the hill, and he took me into like what I felt like was the juggalo section, and everybody was on meth. And I began just to go into this like dark space within my mind. And the medicine took me through every relationship in my family, showing me how my parents, aunts and uncles, grandparents, how all of them got together, and then showed me the way that they began to fight more, and the way that they were very dysfunctional, and how much it was not healthy, the way that those relationships were brought together and how they unfolded. And then I had to experience and live through the pain of their separations, divorces, or even just the residual pain that existed, even if they stayed together, I had to feel all of it. And so I spent the entire night crying all through the night into the morning. And then for the next 2 weeks, I continued to cry because of the pain that I saw within relationships and the ways that those things lived within me, and how it was very possible that I would be in a dysfunctional relationship, that I was in fact in a dysfunctional relationship, and that I needed to get out. And if I didn't, I would be taking on more of the bitterness and the anger and the mishealth that I saw in the family members around me. It was the first time that I started to see how our inner worlds work, where generationally we take on the trauma of our families and we live out some of the same scenarios because we're unconscious about where they're coming from, both, again, the genetic piece of that, DNA-wise, what we carry into this lifetime, but also what we're taught as we get raised by other people. So through this time period, I'm, again, simplifying this because so much is happening and I'm going through such a huge magical awakening. I go to the bookstore every day, and every day I find a new book on metaphysics and the esoteric, and I am trying to find places where I can meditate, and I'm slowly finding new communities that show me different ways to be healthy. I'd never thought about being healthy before. I never thought about eating organic before. And so I went through this whole process of becoming this like very preppy, sorority girl into a hippie. I didn't even know hippies still existed. And when I went through this process, it was so crazy because I'd walk to the downtown of this place where I lived for years. I didn't even know that hippies were around me. And one day it just flipped and I saw hippies everywhere. And so I started to learn from these groups, but I still didn't feel like I fit in. And so the depression continued because I couldn't understand, why was I different? Why didn't I fit in? Why didn't people like me? Also, I wanted to talk about all the different dimensions and how the earth is changing. I thought because I was having the spiritual awakening that other people were also about to go through it just as quickly as I was. So I was just waiting, like, come on guys, catch up. There was nobody in 2008 and 2009 around me waking up. It was extremely, extremely lonely. So from this first awakening process, this was the first time I started to detach from the culture that raised me. It was the first time that I started to see that there were parts of my family dynamics that I did not want to carry with me into the future. It was the first time that I saw the magic in the world of color that I often call it, and got to see the stark contrast between that and the world of black and white that I had been living for so long. But I didn't know how to move past that time period. All I had was everything that was in front of me, which I, again, didn't feel like I belonged. And so I looked to the international landscape. And so I found a way to get to India, and I lived in India for 3 months, and I meditated in temples and stayed in an ashram for a while and volunteered. And through this process, I was having amazing awakenings, amazing revelations. I was traveling with a group of people. There were 12 of us, and I was starting to heal my relationship to being accepted in community, being able to communicate authentically, to be vulnerable, to hold paradox. And through this process, it was just full of amazing laughter, and I was learning about all the different religions through every area that I traveled through. I was learning about Buddhism, Hinduism, Sikhism. I love India. It's my favorite place that I've ever visited. I can't wait to return. And so while I was going through this process, I began to feel the real awakening of my crown. And when I would meditate, I started to feel the way that the energy was spinning me around. It was starting to like open up my chakra, and I would literally be sitting there like this, just going with the flow. Oh, wow, what a beautiful flower in front of me. Anyway, so this energy was coming in, and over time, as it was opening my spirit, I started to get an amazing case of laughter. I mean, I'm not just talking like I laughed a lot, like it was like, it felt like a sickness kind of, because I couldn't help it. And so we would be in like classes learning about meditation and trying to meditate, and I just wouldn't be able to stop laughing, just like gut wrenching, like tears, laughing so hard, harder than I've ever laughed before. And I'd have to leave the room from whatever we were doing. And by the end of whatever was happening on the inside, there would be multiple people outside with me just laughing laughing so hard. And so I just thought I was a laughter monster, and I thought I would carry that with me through the rest of my life. Luckily, when I came home from that experience, I ended up going to South America just after that, lived there for 7 months, and through that process, that was very grounding for me and very different than the experience that I had in India. I worked with shamans in the Shipibo in Peru. That is its own story, and I have so much to say about my work with the medicine, but I began to see the complications and the light and the darkness that exists within spirituality and the ways that we really need to protect ourselves and not just give ourselves over to any sort of spiritual healer along the way, because not everybody has done their work and there's a lot of ego in the world. So again, we'll touch on that another time. I think this is a good place to stop with this one, because even though what I just talked about, there was not just like there was darkness and then there was light. There was a continuous flow of being offered the chance to go deeper and deeper to find my medicine. And through the course of my last 15 years, as you will see, every 5 years I go through a new awakening process. I've gone back into the world of black and white, and then I have to work my way back to the world of color, which is why I can offer the services that I do, where I work with other people to go through their awakening journeys and their dark nights of the soul, because I've had to go through so many of these big, deep deaths within myself and then claim and work with the energies to be reborn stronger with more medicine to share with the world and really hold this frequency of this higher dimensional, loving energy that moves through me, that I am helping to move through you and to activate in you, because we are mirrors for one another. My journey is just a reminder of your journey and vice versa. So I want to know, where are you at in your journey? Are you going through a dark night of the soul right now, an awakening process? Is it leading you deeper into your own sense of adventure, both that of the inward adventure and the external adventure that is here for us on planet Earth, where you can dive into as much as you possibly want to learn and to grow and to strengthen yourself as the person that you are becoming? I know there's a lot more about the awakening journey and dark nights of the soul, and I will continue to break them down and go deeper into these experiences. This again was just a summary of wild shit that I went through, and I will continue to break down in the next couple of videos about the other awakening processes that I went through, which ultimately it's kind of like the awakening journey never fully stops. We are fully going into deeper levels of knowing and understanding. As I said, there are going to be times that it gets really intense and you are being activated and there's so much expansion, and then there's going to be times of collapse and going back inwards. And we do this again and again, but while we're doing it, it's an evolutionary journey where you do not go back through the same spot again and again. You go through the same lessons, but it is an evolved version. And I've talked about this before. It is a spiral that is expanding outwards. And so your second awakening isn't going to be quite like the first one, maybe not as hard in the same ways, but hard in different ways. These awakenings are ramping up, and more people are coming in to these new aspects of the holistic being in which we are, so that we can heal, so we can become healthier community members, so we can share our gifts and creativity and make the world a really amazing place for those who are ready to walk this journey into a more beautiful, holistic, higher dimensional experience. If you are, again, going through Dark Night of the Soul, awakening, reach out. This is the work I do. I am here to guide you, to support you, help you learn your gifts, provide you with tools to navigate it, and to really come out stronger and more powerful than you could ever imagine. Thanks so much for watching today, and I hope you are all experiencing so much potency in your evolutionary journeys wherever you find yourself right now. See you next time.